Welcome back. This is the second video for test number 4. Now, yesterday, or the last video we had was plumbing. It's really fascinating on right side of the brain, left side of the brain. Today we're going to talk about Kohlberg's ladder of moral reasoning. Now, this is really, once again, I really like this test because it's so applicable. It pertains to everybody. I don't care who you are. Plumbing pertains to you. I don't care who you are. Kohlberg's pertains to you. It pertains to you, and it pertains to people that are around you on a daily basis. So here's what you need to know. You're going to need to know everything about Kohlberg's here. All right. So there's 3 parts to Kohlberg's ladder of moral reasoning. Pre-conventional, we'll go over them real quick, and then we'll talk about them in detail. Pre-conventional, punishment, reward. Conventional, good boy, good girl. Law and order. Post-conventional, social contract, and universal ethical. Now, let's talk a little bit about what that means. What that means is, here's a situation to where this is in order. So we all go through this, and when we're a little kid, we start out, we have to learn pre-conventional morality. Okay. Now let's talk about moral and ethical. Okay. Let's talk about moral and ethical. Moral is your sense of right and wrong. Moral says, if I'm a moral person, then I'm going to choose right. If I know right from wrong, okay, then that doesn't mean I might be a very moral person and know right from wrong, but ethical is whether I do right or wrong. So it's kind of interesting. Let's go back and make sure we got this right. Moral and ethical. Moral is knowing right from wrong. Ethical is doing right from wrong. So once again, in a court of law, we may say this person is extremely moral, and the jury, the 12-member jury, may be like, oh, and if they don't associate the difference between moral and ethical, then they're like, they think moral means that that person's doing the right thing. No, that person knows right from wrong. Well, a lot of people know right from wrong, but they're not ethical. They don't do the right thing. See, so that's a big thing. So this is the ladder of moral reasoning, of what we determine is right or wrong. Now we're going to go to the next step of whether or not we're ethical, whether or not we make that decision. So it's kind of interesting. Now, here's the problem with morals. The problem with morals is we may have not all been taught the same thing about right from wrong. So this is what Kohlberg is saying. We all go through these things, and then we're taught to fill in the blanks here. For example, pre-conventional, the first thing we learn is punishment. Oh, so if we have punishment, if something bad is going to happen to us, we're not going to do it. Well, this is kind of interesting. This is the first thing, and once again, when you're born and you're a baby, the first thing you have is punishment. Does it mean that does it mean you're going to be punished? No, what it means is that something bad's going to happen to you. Okay? So this is something bad, punishment. Whatever. Okay? And let's get away from being a baby. Let's get to a kid that's doing logic. All right? So, if I know that I'm going to get a spanking or I'm going to get sent to timeout, that's one thing. If I know that if I do this, people aren't going to like me, oh, that's a punishment. Or if I know that I'm going to do something that's going to cause bad consequences, that's punishment. So it's kind of interesting. So Kohlberg, once again, long-term testing of this through the years, and it's withstood the test. Kohlberg says the first thing we always do is we say, hey, it's a punishment. Wow. So I'm driving down the road and I'm speeding, and I say to myself, why would I not speed? Well, the reason I'm not going to speed is because I know that there's a speeding ticket. Well, it's not the ticket, it's not disappointing the officer that bothers me, okay? It's that now tickets cost like $100 or more. So the bigger the punishment, the more the reason for making the right choice. So it's kind of interesting because number 2 in pre-conventional is reward. So now it's like, okay, am I going to be rewarded for doing the right thing? And then some things you do. You know, you go to work, you receive you work hard all week, you receive a paycheck. Hopefully your paycheck is the reward. Now, sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. You're better off if you're on a job, if your boss comes to you and says you're doing a good job, or somebody at work, or somebody that you work with, or somebody that you work for. You know, as a teacher, if a student says, man, I learned a lot today, I'm like, boy, that makes me want to keep teaching. That makes me want to do more. That makes me want to do a better job, even than a paycheck. So Kohlberg Kohlberg says the first thing we look at is punishment, and then we look at reward. Oh, that's pretty cool. And then he goes to conventional thinking in terms of morality. Now, this is good boy, good girl, law and order. Now, this is deeper than punishment and reward. So, in number 3, okay, why do you do it? You do it because you just do the right thing. Nobody's looking, okay? Nobody's looking, do you do the right thing? All right? You're out at you're out at a store or something, and nobody's looking, okay? And you're not thinking punishment, you're not thinking reward. In other words, if you get caught stealing something, there's a punishment. The reward, you might say to yourself, wow, this outweighs the punishment. I'll steal this because I really would like to have that. But in number 3, the good boy, good girl says, it's the wrong thing to do. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do the right thing because I'm a good person. Now, that's number 3. It's kind of interesting. So see now as you think. See now we got a lot of different thinking level here. Now it's interesting because pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional comes from 3 different parts of your brain. Really interesting. Okay? Alright? This comes from your logical side. Okay? Now we begin to come from, well, we'll talk about parts of the brain. This comes to the automatic default of what you do without determining punishment or reward. Good boy, good girl. And number 4 is even a little deeper, law and order. If I pulled out a gun and shot somebody because I didn't like them, okay, I pulled out a gun and shot somebody because I didn't like them, well, there might be punishment, there might be a reward, and I probably wouldn't do it because I'm a good person, but even more than that, law and order, if everybody pulled out a gun and shot somebody, this world wouldn't be worth living in. Good example of law and order, the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit came in and they lost the manufacturing of cars, and their economy tanked, and all of a sudden their tax dollars, they didn't have money to operate, and they didn't have enough policemen. And the chief of police came on and he talked to the whole city of Detroit. And he said, hey, famous story, it's written about it in your psychology book. They come in and they say, okay, the city of Detroit doesn't have enough policemen. If you're out there and you're robbing the store, we're probably not going to catch you. And you know what? If you've got a little crime, like you're just getting mugged or somebody's just beating you up, and you call, chances are we're not going to be able to come. And people were like, wow, what does this mean? This is awful. But the chief of police said to the whole city, when he broadcasts this out on the radio, on the TV, the whole city, he says, you know what? The only way that we're going to make this work is if everybody believes in law and order, and you do the right thing without having to have a policeman standing there to tell you to do it. And if you're a criminal and you look at this and you say, okay, if I'm going to live in Detroit, yeah, oh, what a great place to be a criminal. You're like, okay, well, then there's going to be no law and order. So they just pleaded with everybody to look at law and order that said that if I don't do the right thing and other people do the same thing, then we have a society that we can't even live in. It's so dangerous, so much chaos that we can't even live in it, that we're willing to accept law and order to not do it. So once again, we're getting higher order thinking. Then we go to post-conventional morality, social contract. So this is even higher because in a social contract, we agree to be a society. We agree to be a society. We say, okay, well, here in the United States, okay, we agree to treat people, honorably, okay. Or the social contract may go down a little bit further, and it might be, the social contract might be, in our neighborhood we help other people whenever they need help. All right? I knew a guy one time that told me that he kind of grew up in a rough neighborhood, and he said their social contract was kind of interesting. You can steal from people, just don't steal from any of your friends or your neighbors. So that's interesting. That's a social contract. So the question is, what is our social contract? What are we agreeing to do? Even though it's not punishment, even though it's reward, not good boy, good girl, law and order, what's our social contract? It's something that our society or our culture or our group of people or our school or our business or our town, everybody just kind of non-verbally agrees to this social contract. So that's pretty deep too. That's pretty deep too. Because then, why are we having trouble in our society? society, because then there's people who are back here operating on punishment and reward, and the reward for them is, if I rob that bank, I'm going to make thousands of dollars. But see, other people are thinking on a higher order than that, okay? That they wouldn't rob a bank because it's the wrong thing to do. If everybody robbed the bank, we wouldn't have law and order. And we have a social contract in that we just don't go in and put a gun to somebody's head. But what's happening in today's society? Today's society, we're getting away from social contract. We're getting away from people seeing law and order. And we're getting a little bit away from good boy, good girl, to the point where there is no social contract and people just do whatever they want to do. Now, what's that? That goes right back here to pre-conventional. That's where we have the morality. That's where we have the morality of an 8-year-old. That's where we have the morality of an 8-year-old. We don't think through what we're doing. And that's the problem with society, is that we have some people that do that today, that have no social contract. Oh, but wait till you hear about number 6. Number 6 can really get us in trouble here. Number 6, once again, pre-conventional. It's called the universal ethical. Now, in the United States, now this looks like a higher order thinking, because we talked about social contract, but universal ethical, this is where we weigh out all the situation and we say, this is the right thing to do because. Well, Kohlberg, when he came out with this, it was very controversial, and people said universal ethical, how can we change what's right or wrong based on what we're talking ourselves in or out of? And what happened is, he said to himself, he said, or in the statement here of his morality, that this is where somebody who is not ethical misuses morality. For example, universal ethical. What would you not do? I wouldn't kill somebody. Well, universal ethical. You're in the military, you have no choice. You're like, I wouldn't kill somebody, but if I'm in the military, I have to think about it like this. The people that I kill maybe keep other people, maybe somebody that would have killed somebody else, that keeps somebody from dying. Well, wow, that's a whole lot of thought, isn't it? So here's what happens when we get to universal ethical. This is somebody that robs a bank that goes, you know what, I'm a good person, and I wouldn't rob this bank, except that I'm going to rob this bank, and because it's all these rich people, and I'm going to give it to the poor people, the Robin Hood syndrome. So it's okay to rob this bank, because I can justify that. Okay? There's a movie with Denzel Washington, and it's called John.